FOMO happens all the time.
The Fed has cut rates. Yes, now we are at the lowest level since 2022, which means that everybody and their brother is going to go start scrambling to go get a mortgage. And hey, if you happen to get one at the 7.5% rate, maybe the value of your house will go up. But we'll see what happens with that, where we go, and what we do with that. In other news, the government shutdown continues, but John Thune starts to say that, hey, maybe we can start having some conversations as several of the largest government unions start to buck the idea of the government being shut down, because it's actually starting to look bad for Democrats. We didn't think that this could happen, and God only knows I had no idea that Republicans could hold strong on something like this. But yes, there might be some cracks in the Democrat armor. We'll see what's happening, where we go from that, and what we do there. And Joe Biden is under fire, with talks of actually undoing some of the pardons that were done by AutoPen. As anybody who has been watching this channel since the Biden era knows, I have some very, very definite opinions about the AutoPen and what happens with them, and they don't always align with the GOP interests. But we're going to talk about what's actually happening, what's coming from the government, and yes, what I think about that, because, well, it's my channel, so I get to talk about what I want. And a new protest is getting ready to start here on November 5th around the White House. We're going to talk about some of the things that are planned, what is probably going to come out of this, and where it goes from there. It is going to be all of this and more over here on Contemporary. So, strap yourselves in, find a couple friends, get a little bit of breakfast, get a little bit of coffee, have your morning coffee with me, maybe have your morning Alley Guys beer with me as well, and we will see you on the other side of the title card. And to lose all my senses, that is just so typically me. Oh baby, baby, I am J. Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Well, good morning and happy Halloween for those of you who celebrate. My name is J. Edgar. Welcome to Contemporary. We have a bunch of stuff to go over here today, so do bear with me a little bit here. I changed around my setup a little bit because for the festivity, I threw my mirrored sunglasses on, threw my Mac hat on, and threw a shout out to the late Johnny Hardwick with a costume, especially given the fact that we had the King of the Hill revival this year. Although I was told last year, I'm not allowed to shave for Halloween costumes anymore, so we don't get that aspect of the Dale Gribble costume. But, yep, we have the Dale Gribble costume back on, and I could even do some Dale Gribble voice, although I can't really do the Toby Huss one yet, because I don't have a lot of audio for that, and I don't really know what's going on with that one here. But yeah, we've got a bunch of stuff to go over here today. Although, in the grand scheme of things, really realistically, when you sit down on article count versus what it is that we've been doing for quite a while, this is actually a pretty slow news week. I was pleasantly surprised, I will come back out and say. But yeah, the backlight is going out on my middle screen. I just replaced over my left screen, so Pom could have her other monitor back because I got to use that for way too long. Thank you to the lovely woman who has decided to share her home with me. So we did some things. We got some things changed around here. I actually went on a little bit of an eBay shopping spree, and it was a little bit of fun. Got a couple things that were needed, a couple things that were probably not needed, but you know, when it's on the company gift card, when they say Happy Holidays by handing you a Tango gift card, letting you spend it wherever you want, you get to pick. So I got some cool stuff with the new pickup coming in. I got my Brotherhood of Steel sticker off of that order. New controller for my Switch that actually docks on, so that was kind of fun. That's kind of cool. But we do have a lot of news to go over here today, so we're going to get right to it here. And then, yeah, I kind of got a hard out yet today, so we can't stay around too long, but we'll see what's going on with that. Highleaf is here, says, good news, my Secu company may get a contract to help guard a new AI data center in Redacted, because we don't dox each other in chat. It's only the 5th building in the whole US. Nice. Give you the inside scope on that for part of the news, and what is your opinion on AI data centers? Well, I like the fact that a lot of people can do stuff with AI, and it may be a leap forward in technology and help us get to the next step in technology. I myself choose not to use it. I don't want to give a bunch of data over to the robots that are about to enslave me. They're going to enslave me no matter what, but I'd rather not help them out if possible. So I'm not a huge fan of AI, honestly. And that's not just the Dale Gribble costume talking. I prefer not to use it as well. I prefer to use my own intelligence whenever possible. So, plus my boss asked my boss if an AR pistol is the same as a pistol for my guard card. Probably not. 5 a.m. to 3 p.m. today. Luna C is here as well. How to respect anything or anyone that actually thought Biden or Trump is real. Don't know. Goes to Scarf says Skynet, and Lunacy says Double Edge. Anyway, we got a lot to go over here today, so let's go ahead and get started. Before we do make sure you go and give a little bit of support to Katie Zed. I can't give any details, but I will say that if prayer works the way that it's supposed to work, even if you say, please watch over Katie Zed, then, well, that's all that we can say on here. I'm not going to say anything else on the channel for respect of family, respect of everything else that's going on, and the hopes that they can come out of what it is that they are going through right now. So, but yeah, if you're praying, go pray for them. It's a good cause. Absolutely, prayer is always a good cause. So, and yeah, we're gonna go from there. Let's get started. Where is my news scene? Let's make sure that held where I want it to be. Yeah, I can read the news usually on my center screen with my regular glasses, but with the sunglasses on, yes, it is festive. Yes, it's Halloweeny. But with that backlight over on the left side, I can't read a goddamn thing on that screen right now. It's terrible, it is. Alright. And no, I can't get contacts. Nobody will let me have contacts if I can't take them out. For obvious reasons. It's probably a good thing, actually. Offer does still stand. If we get 20 paid subs on the Twitch channel before the first one expires, so if we have 20 contiguous subs going on, I will learn how to play the ukulele. There is a beautiful Frozen ukulele with Anna and Elsa on it. And I will play it here on stream for you guys. 20 subs in a month. In a 30-day time period is all that you need to watch me emasculate myself with a Disney ukulele. So keep that in mind. Check out what it is that you have and open up your hearts and open up your wallets. It'll really help out the household as well. And yeah, consider telling some more people about the channel and saying, hey, this guy with a big beard is going to go back and play a Frozen ukulele. So all you gotta do is either use your free sub that comes with Amazon Prime or $5 a month. That's all it takes. Alright, let's get started. Let's get to it, shall we? From CNN to start with, Federal Reserve cuts rate to lowest level in 3 years. You know what we didn't do? I just realized this. We've got the Federal Reserve up here, yes. But we did not put our Dow Jones up here. A little bit hectic this morning. A few things all going on at once. But everybody is in, everybody's fed, everybody's happy. So we're going to go with that. But we're going to start actually with the Dow this morning, because that's still showing its previous close. On the Dow today, we are at 47,632. Yes, that's actually one of the parts of the article we're going to be looking at is, with the news that we're talking about with the Fed rate cut, the Dow jumped to 47,000. Looks like it actually hit 48,000 at some point here in the past few days. So, yeah, it was yesterday. We got a record high. So we're at 47,632 even. That's not a record high close, but it is a record high intraday. Let's actually grab one from... We'll grab Yahoo Finance. And we will grab some CNN, or CNBC rather, not CNN. Alright, starting with Yahoo Finance stock market today. Dow, S&P, and NASDAQ futures struggle after Trump-Xi truce with big tech earnings ahead. Where's my cursor? There it is. U.S. stock futures slumped on Thursday as Wall Street eyed the U.S.-China trade truce struck by Trump and Xi, cooling odds of another interest rate cut and the next tranche of big tech earnings. Well, we just got a really, really big one, so... And Powell even said, like, it's unlikely to have another one. So, you're kind of going into something that's already expected, you guys. The Dow Jones Industrial Average futures slipped 0.3%. Contracts on the broad benchmark S&P 500 also fell 0.3%, while those on the tech-heavy NASDAQ lost 0.5%. Stocks have lost steam after Fed Chair Jerome Powell stressed that a December rate cut is not a foregone conclusion, far from it. His comments, which came after the central bank lowered its benchmark rate by 0.25 percentage point, highlight division among policymakers. The Trump-Xi meeting overnight failed to provide a boost, even as it delivered effectively a one-year trade truce. The U.S. will have fentanyl-related tariffs on China in return for a 12-month pause on Beijing's curbs on rare earth supplies, while China has pledged to start buying American soybeans again. That way they can pump their own citizens full of soy. Or eat delicious edamame, one of the two. Although, edamame, do they call it the same thing in China? I don't think it is. Meanwhile, investors brace for quarterly results from tech megacaps Apple and Amazon after the bell following mixed earnings reports from the Magnificent Seven counterparts, Alphabet, Meta, and Microsoft late Wednesday. Alphabet shares jumped over 7% after the Google parent reported stronger than expected quarterly results, but Meta sank almost 8% and Microsoft slipped nearly 3% rather, as investors paused the company's I cannot read today, holy crap, as investors parsed the company's outlooks. So, a little bit of a live updater here as well. 15 minutes ago, Meta stock drops 10% after company reports tax charge increased capex plans. Meta dropped 10% ahead of the market open on Thursday after a tax hit and higher operating expenses and AI investments spooked investors. That is a hell of a drop. Look at that. I guess nobody wants the actual AI, Mark Zuckerberg, to be in control of their AI. Meta reported revenue that beat estimates, but its third quarter earnings per share fell short of expectations due to a one-time tax-related charge the company reported from Wednesday afternoon. Notably, Meta said it isn't planning on slowing down capital expenditures. Well, yeah, when you're running basically on somebody else's money, why the hell would you ever slow down? The company is targeting $70 billion to $72 billion in investments in 2025, compared to its prior outlook of $66 billion to $72 billion. Our current expectation is that capital expenditures dollar growth will be notably larger in 2026 than 2025, Meta CFO Susan Lee said in her commentary. I can't exactly wrap my head around this either, you guys. Honestly, I'm going to be the first one to admit it. I have no idea why Facebook is one of the biggest drivers of our economy. That is lost on me. Why Facebook, of all companies, is the one that is driving everything else. They don't produce anything. Like these big mega cap tech stocks. Nvidia produces stuff. Microsoft, for all their faults, produces stuff. Meta produces Instagram whores and tech addicted boomers. Even Roblox, and that's showing up on the trending tickers, even Roblox produces something. It's a platform, from what I understand, it's a platform for indie artists even to go and display their stuff out for kids to go back and pick up. But they actually produce something. I don't know. Palm says, I don't care if I'm not first. Palm is napping with Ed Jr. since Ed Jr. is being a Velcro baby. Luna C says, who uses Facebook? I actually used it for a long time. There physically exists a Facebook page for me. It has not been signed in to or viewed. Well, it's been signed into because we do stream to it. But it has not been viewed. The feed has not been viewed since 2018. And I do feel a little bit better for that. I was a Facebook addict, by the way. So just the story behind that, so everybody knows what happened with that is the last live-in girlfriend before Palm back in 2018 got really abusive verbally, and J. Edgar got into a little bit of depression, and some thoughts were had at that point, and realized that he goes from posting on Facebook at the time 5, 6, 7 times a day to absolute radio silence almost instantly, and nobody called and checked on J. Edgar because nobody cared. You can have 300, 400, 1,000 quote friends, but nobody cares what's going on in your life, so you just drop the whole thing. Well, I went away from it because depression. But when I stopped being depressed, when that girl broke up with me and walked out of my life, it felt like a weight came off my shoulder and I stopped being depressed. But I'm like, yeah, I don't really want to go back. I don't want to go back to these people that don't actually care, that just like the post every once in a while because it showed up in their feed. But don't miss me if I'm not in their lives. So I never went back. I signed in so we could stream to it, but yeah, I've not checked the feed because, hey, those people didn't care about me. I don't care about what's going on in their lives. No offense to those people. I'm sure that they have beautifully interesting lives. But yes, there does exist a J. Edgar Facebook page. I do sometimes go onto the marketplace, because it is admittedly better than Craigslist. Admittedly. Does Craigslist even exist anymore? I guess I haven't looked for a while. Anyway, but yeah, that's my rant on Facebook. And again, if you like to use it, that's cool. It's fine. I'm not gonna dog you for it. Absolutely not. I just don't know why it's running our economy. That's the part that blows my mind. Alright, from yesterday, Dow closes lower, giving up gain after Powell signals Fed may not cut again this year. From Sean Conlon and Sarah Min. The Dow Jones staged a rapid reversal on Wednesday, touching a record high earlier in the session before rolling over after Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell indicated that the central bank might not cut interest rates again in 2025. The blue chip index closed down 74.37 points, or 0.2%, to 47,632 even, while the S&P ended a handful of points lower to 68,9059. The Nasdaq outperformed, rising 0.5% to a fresh record close of 23,958.47, propped up by a rise in Nvidia. The Dow was up as much as 334 points, touching a new all-time high at one point before turning lower. The Fed lowered its benchmark overnight borrowing rate by a quarter percentage point at the conclusion of its two-day policy meeting Wednesday afternoon, putting it in a range between 3.75 and 4%. This marks the second time this year the central bank had slashed rates. Prior to the decision, investors were betting on another quarter-point cut at the Fed's December meeting, even though Powell came right out and said, no, that's probably not going to be a possibility. But Powell knocked down the market expectations after saying there was a strongly differing view about how to proceed in December during his meeting's committee discussions. A further reduction in the policy rate at the December meeting is not a foregone conclusion. Far from it, he said. The 10-year yield jumped back above 4% on Powell's comments about the December meeting. Stocks that stand to lose from higher rates led the rollover in the market. Consumer stocks like Costco, McDonald's declined. Visa and MasterCard also fell. We're actually debating a Costco membership in this household. I think it would be cool, honestly. I've been in a Costco, but I've never spent money in a Costco. But I've seen the way the prices go and some of the cool stuff they have. They have a huge dog bed selection. Or they did in Madison, I guess. I've never been in the one over here on this side of the state. But that's what we have there. So we will see what is happening with the market. Let's continue to talk about what is happening on the rate cut. Back to where we were before I realized we didn't have the Dow up and open. The Federal Reserve cuts rates to the lowest level in 3 years. From Brian Mena, Elizabeth Bushwald, John Tofile, and Matt Egan over at CNN. This is a live updater. Yes, I know, I hate these. Somebody left this in the Discord. Alright. From Brian Mena, Federal Reserve officials voted for another quarter-point rate cut on Wednesday, lowering their benchmark lending rate to a range between 3.75 and 4%, the lowest in 3 years, which means mortgages are probably under 6, if not hovering around 6 right now. The decision drew 2 dissents from Fed Governor Stephen Moran, who backed a larger half-point cut, and another from Kansas City Fed President Jeffrey Schmidt, who preferred to hold borrowing costs steady. It's the first time since 2019 that there were dueling dissents, both calling for easier and tighter policy, underscoring the heated debate among officials over how Trump's sweeping policies on trade, immigration, and spending are affecting the U.S. economy. I never texted Quest. Give me a sec. We'll get Fanning in here, and then he'll come and chatter us up. Let's get this in here. First off, let's grab the link from the Discord. If you're not in the Discord, by the way, link in the description. Go and join us over there. You can even comment on the live announcement. Copy link. We went early. Busy day. And then Quest will sit and listen to me for double speed for like 10 minutes. And I'll be sitting there talking like this, and people will think that I'm Ben Shapiro, especially if they're listening to him over the shoulder, and they'll say, why is this person talking so fast, and can this person actually understand what he's saying so fast, and what's going to happen with that? Alright, let's keep going. That one we've actually read for the most part. Money moves to make now that the Fed has cut rates again. This is not official financial advice. If you want official financial advice for your household, please make sure you check with your financial advisor. Always check with your financial advisor. I can tell you what's going on. I cannot tell you what is best for your family. Your financial advisor knows you, knows what's in your bank account, knows what your family structure is like, and your financial advisor can tell you what's best for you, hopefully. If not, he sucks. The Federal Reserve's move on Wednesday will affect various consumer savings and lending rates throughout the economy. It could make it a little harder, but still possible to find attractive inflation-beating yields for your savings if you comparison shop. Even if the rates available today move down a bit given the Fed's latest move, there's still plenty of low-risk options that will let you grow your savings and protect your purchasing power. If you have debt, the Fed's moves may save you some money. But how much debt you choose to take on, how quickly you plan to pay it off, and how high you can get your credit score before applying for a loan may save you more money than a small rate cut or two from the Fed. So, they have more here if you're interested in that. So, a few things that are happening with that. Let's grab one from CNBC again. Fed cuts rate again, but Powell raises doubts about easing at next meeting. From Jeff Cox. Cox. The Federal Reserve on Wednesday approved its second straight interest rate cut, though Powell rattled markets when he threw doubt on whether another reduction is coming in December. By a 10-2 vote, the central bank's Federal Open Market Committee lowered its benchmark overnight, borrowing rate to range of 3.75 to 4%. In addition to the rate move, the Fed announced that it would be ending the reduction of its asset purchases, a process known as quantitative tightening, on December 1st. So, easier money. Much easier money. Much easier flow. Stephen Moran cast a dissenting vote. We talked about that. He preferred the Fed not cut it at all. Moran is an appointee of Trump who has pushed hard on the committee to lower rates quickly. So even some dissent inside of the cabinet, which throws a little bit of shade on our little narrative of Trump only hires loyalists. And nobody dares stand up to him. That is exactly one of his appointees standing up to him right there. The rate also sets a benchmark for a variety of consumer products such as auto loans, mortgages, and credit cards. The post-meeting statement did not provide any direction on what the committee's plans are for December. At the September meeting, officials indicated the likelihood of 3 total cuts this year. The Fed meets once more in December. Powell, however, remained cautious against assuming that a rate cut is a sure thing at the next meeting. In the committee's discussions at this meeting, there was a strongly differing views about how to proceed in December, Powell said during his post-meeting news conference. A further reduction in policy rate at the December meeting is not a foregone conclusion, far from it. So we're stuck, and this is a little bit of what rattles markets. It's not the fact of whether or not he said, yes, we're going to cut, or no, keep that interest rate high because that slows down the money. It's the uncertainty. It's the fact that these Wall Street folks can't look at this and say, okay, we know what's going to happen. We can build in what we want to. We can prop up stocks that are going to benefit from this because we know it's going to happen. We have now 5 weeks of we don't know what's going to happen because nobody can give us a straight answer on what it is that we intend to do. It is a huge will they, won't they, and yes, that's a terrible thing for markets. So I guess all we can do on that one is continue to watch. ABC News pointing out the fact that we were looking for a larger reduction sought by Trump for Max Zahn Fed cuts interest rates for a second time this year, but rejects large reductions sought by Trump. We're going to skip around a little bit in this one because we don't need to read the entire thing. The Federal Reserve cut its benchmark rate a quarter percentage point on Wednesday to jumpstart the flogging labor market. Yes, we know that. The widely expected move delivers a lowering of interest rates sought by Trump, though the size of the cuts falls short of the major drawdown called for repeatedly by the president. I mean, let's be completely realistic. The president wants a 0% benchmark rate right now because that means that everybody's going to go back out and flood the market looking for stuff, including people like myself. We're going to, like, Pom and I talked about this. I don't want to talk too much about household expenses because, well, it's our household, it's not yours. But the thought was, if it drops back to zero, especially with the rates that our houses are at right now, then yes, it is sell everything that we can find to beg, steal, and borrow and get our house rates down to the lowest they can possibly be. And that is a huge, huge, huge cut in monthly payments too, by the way. Like, pay off every credit card you have level of cut. Even over 30 years, you don't even realize how much interest you're paying on some of these loans if you're at a minimal amount of like 7.5%. And yes, I understand houses were less expensive when our boomer parents and grandparents were buying them, but when they were sitting at 18-20% interest rates on mortgages and thought that they were doing great. You sit here and you think to yourself, wow, how big was your payment versus your income? And how did you sit back and run it? Because, yeah. I don't want to give huge details about where my house is at, but the rate cut, if we went back down to a 0% benchmark rate, the amount saved in interest every month in this household would pay off 2 of my bills every month. It's crazy. That's insanity. All right. Well, they don't give us the number that the president was looking for, but we kind of know that, yeah, he's looking for that zero rate. Because that's part of what kickstarted his economy the first time, is the fact that we got down to the zero rate. Now, a part of the reason that we might be comfortable coming back out and doing this is in spite of all the doom and gloom. There you go, Lunacy. Lunacy says, end the Fed. There you go. That's an idea I can get behind. All right, from NBC, regular NBC, inflation hits 3% in September, reflecting stubborn price pressures on U.S. consumers. Okay, I went up a percentage point, that's why. I was going to say, why are they sitting over here freaking out and saying stubborn price pressures? We're not sitting at 9.5% again. Yeah, we're not at the 2%, and, well, that sucks for the U.S., but I don't know. From Steve Kopak and Rob Weil. The sting of rising prices continues to linger. Consumer price growth hit 3% in September. On an annual basis, the Bureau of Labor Statistics reported on Friday slightly higher than the 2.9% rate seen in August. On a monthly basis, the rate fell from 0.3% to 0.2%, though many major categories saw increases, including housing, airline, fares, recreation, household furnishings, and apparel. By the way, if they continue to cut the rates, you are going to see housing prices go up, with the reflection, of course, being the interest rate bringing the payments down. So keep that in mind. And like I said, it's going to be great for people like me, who got in at the start of the lagging market on a house that sat for a long time and was able to get into the house with a little bit of equity in it. And then now that people are going to start bidding and fighting over all these houses that are on the market again, the rest of our houses are going to go up in value. And we'll have some nice little equity in them again. The BLS report comes despite the government shutdown that has paralyzed most federal reporting and has no end in sight. It marks the first time a major economic report has been issued by the government since the shutdown began October 1st. September CPI data was originally scheduled to be released on October 15th. The government ultimately decided to issue the report since the numbers are needed to determine the cost of living adjustments for Social Security recipients next year. Consumers continue to deal with steadily rising prices alongside a job market that appears frozen in place. While workers' earnings have continued to climb along with prices, hitting a new post-pandemic high in the second quarter of the year, many consumers report feeling continued financial stress. Inflation edged out tariffs to become the consumers' most reported concerns. In the Conference Board Research Group's September survey, the University of Michigan's closely watched surveys found overall consumer sentiment in October was down 22% from the same a month ago. On Wall Street and Main Street, the Trump administration's global trade and tariffs policy continued to loom large. We continue to expect tariffs to remain a good source of goods price inflation over the next few quarters, economists with Bank of America wrote in a client note earlier this week. Friday's report also has implications from the Federal Reserve, which is tasked with balancing inflation and employment through interest rates. The September inflation report arrives less than a week before the Federal Reserve's policy meeting, which starts October 28th. The central bank is widely expected to lower its key benchmark rate, which helps set borrowing costs throughout the economy by 0.25%, which obviously we already know that was 2 days ago that, yes, we did get the quarter point drop. So we're sitting here, we're hanging around, we don't know where we're going to go. And we're going to see some wild stuff come out of the markets because of it. That is prior to them releasing, so the government's belatedly releasing inflation data on Friday. Here's what economists are expecting. CPI is projected to have risen 3.1%, which would be the highest since the inflation gauge hit 3.3% in May of 24, according to economists polled by FactSet. But still nowhere near the point where it got to 9.5 under the previous administration. And even that is coming into question because, well, there's evidence that they changed the way that inflation got reported, and we were probably closer to the 20 to 30% that we saw in the 80s and the late 70s. We can sit and speculate about that all day long. But it was expected to see a 3.1%, and we actually saw 3%. So, huzzah. Let's keep going. Dow rallies 400 points for the first close above 47,000 ever, following a mild inflation report. From CNBC, this is a live updater, but this is long since over. So, we have a tale of three stories, all covering the same event, in three different articles going in three different directions. CNN saying, oh, it's horrible and everything is way too high, and what are we going to do because we're feeling the pressure and it's giving to Americans the pressure of stinging high inflation and high prices. It's so sticky. Oh my God. ABC saying, CBS saying, we expected it to be 3.1%. It came in a little bit cooler. And now CNBC saying, hey, the people who buy into the markets are all excited over the fact that it was cooler than expected. The media will sit back here and tell you the story three different ways to try to get you to feel a certain way depending on your outlet. U.S. stocks closed at a new high on Friday as cool inflation data spurred optimism among investors that the Reserve can stay on its rate-cutting path, boosting the economy and justifying higher valuations for equities. On that day, the Dow rose 472.51 points, or 1%, to 47,207.12. Now we've been over 48,000, securing its first close above 47,000 ever. The S&P added 0.79% to 6791.69, while the Nasdaq climbed 1.15% to 23,204.87. All three major averages closed at records. The September CPI report, which was delayed because of the U.S. government shutdown, rose 0.3% on the month, bringing the annual inflation rate to 3% according to the BLS. That's just below the 0.4% and 3.1% economists polled by Dow had expected. When excluding food and energy, core CPI came in at 0.2% last month and 3% on a 12-month basis, also lighter than the Dow Jones forecast for 0.3% and 3.1% respectively. So, definitely a few things going on with that. Alright, we got to talk about what's going on in the Caribbean right now. So, we're going to read from the Weather Channel. Scenes of ruin emerge in Jamaica and Cuba as Hurricane Melissa pummels the Caribbean. Because of the hurricane, I almost used the Allman Brothers song, Sweet Melissa, as my opening lyrics before the title card. After all the pain and destruction, I opted against that. You're welcome. From Sean Breslin and Jen Jordan. Hurricane Melissa has turned its focus towards Bermuda after leaving a trail of destruction across Jamaica and Cuba and inundating the Bahamas and Turks and Caicos. Residents in low-lying areas of Turks and Caicos were ordered to shelter in place overnight Wednesday. In Jamaica, recovery efforts were just beginning. 77% of the island remained without power, though commercial flights were expected to resume in some areas by Thursday. After surveying the hardest-hit communities, the Prime Minister called the destruction heartbreaking, man, but said the resilience and unity of the Jamaican people were unbroken. Melissa was on track to reach Bermuda Thursday morning, bringing damaging winds and flooding and rain. And then they've got links for Melissa's full forecast and for the path of the storm as we track it, which I'm actually going to open both of these, just to kind of see where it is that we're looking. Pressure's gone down
just a little bit at 965. But
silence! I do think it's unlikely that this is going to hit the mainland. Yeah, it's accelerating the open Atlantic after plowing through the southeast Bahamas. So it looks like it came and it boomeranged around and now it's going back out to sea. It touched the Caribbean. It's probably going to cause a little bit of weather events on the eastern seaboard. High waves, maybe a little bit of rain going on, but as far as coming on and wiping out, North Carolina or something, I think you're fine. And the Weather Channel seems to think so as well. You should still be vigilant, of course, if you are on the coast. You should still keep watch and just make sure, and you'll have plenty of advance notice if it does change directions. But pay close attention, keep yourselves and everybody else safe. That looks like John Madden drew that, by the way. That map right there. Yeah, plenty of stuff going on there. Let's grab the other one. The tracker forecast tracks rainfall, winds threaten more. Yeah, we saw that already too. So, if you know anybody in Jamaica and Cuba, go check on them. Will Melissa be retired after its catastrophic impact in Jamaica? It's almost certain the name Melissa will be retired from future hurricane name lists. The World Meteorological Organization's Hurricane Committee will meet in the spring of 26 to decide which storm names from 25 were too deadly or destructive to be used again, and Melissa's impact seemingly makes that decision an easy one. What, you mean we're never going to get another Hurricane Katrina moment? Just like we never used the names like Andrew, Katrina, or Sandy, it would feel confusing and insensitive to face another Hurricane Melissa years from now. They even brought it right up. I still remember the Hurricane Andrew thing because that was That was a huge deal under the Clinton admin when I was in my teen years. And it was where a lot of us, I think, first found out about the naming convention, honestly. Like, it was just wall-to-wall coverage. Hurricane Andrew, Hurricane Andrew, Hurricane Andrew all the time when I was a kid. Even for months after, and then, obviously, Katrina. That's going to be in people's minds, especially my age, probably until they die. I think Gen Z is going to be the first one that doesn't have some sort of memory of Hurricane Katrina, even if they were never there. I mean, come on. It was a deciding factor for the Bush admin. Full disclosure. Latest on Jamaica's major airports. Jamaica's Minister of Energy, Telecommunications and Transport says 2/3 of the island's nation's airports will reopen for commercial flights tomorrow. The first relief flight was scheduled for today. That was yesterday. Norman Manley International in Kingston. Relief flights start at 4 p.m. October 29th. Commercial flights 7 a.m. October 30th. Ian Fleming International Airport, Boscobel. They have an airport named after the Bond guy? Holy crap. I did not know that. Commercial flights begin at 7 a.m. October 30th. Sangster International Airport in Montego Bay, relief flights at 10 a.m. October 30th. Commercial flights are still to be determined at this point, following a completion of assessment. So, there you go. If you want to go to Jamaica for whatever reason, now is the time. Hurricane Melissa leaves trail of destruction across Cuba, Haiti, and Jamaica. From Ariel Fernandez, Andrea Rodriguez, John Myers Jr., and Evan Sanan. Melissa left at least dozens dead and caused widespread destruction across Cuba, Haiti, and Jamaica, where roofless homes, toppled utility poles, and waterlogged furniture dominated the landscape on Wednesday. A landslide blocked the main roads of Santa Cruz and Jamaica's St. Elizabeth Parish, where streets were reduced to mud pits. Residents swept water from homes as they tried to salvage belongings. Wind ripped off part of the roof at a high school that serves as a public shelter. I never see anything like this before in all my years of living here, resident Jennifer Small said. Is it offensive for me to use a Jamaican accent? Am I crossing some cultural norms here? Hey, look, we can go to Twitch. We can get cheap viewers at streamboo.com. Remove the space. Should we go to streamboo.com? Should we do it? Lunacy says government shut down ferry to Cumberland Island. Let's see. You can have 10 minutes to think about what it is that you said. Bode Arch K4AAMNRCP6FXFE, which is totally a legitimate name, and I'm sure that there's a story behind all of those numbers and letters in that person's name. Benefit of the doubt, I'm telling you. The extent of the damage from the deadly hurricane was unclear on Wednesday as widespread power outages and dangerous conditions persisted in the region. It's too early for us to say definitively, said Dana Morris-Dixon, Jamaica's education minister. Melissa made landfall Tuesday in Jamaica as Category 5, with top winds of 185 miles an hour, one of the strongest Atlantic hurricanes on record before weakening and moving on to Cuba. But even countries outside the direct path of the massive storm felt its devastating effects. And like I said, if you're on the eastern seaboard, do keep an eye on what's happening around you as well. At least 25 people have passed away across Haiti and 18 are missing. Haiti Civil Protection Agency said in a statement on Wednesday, 20 of those reported dead and 10 of the missing are from a southern coastal town where flooding collapsed dozens of homes. At least 8 are dead in Jamaica. In Cuba, officials reported collapsed houses, blocked mountain roads, and roofs blown off mountain or buildings on Wednesday, with the heaviest destruction concentrated in the southwest and northwest. Authorities said about 735,000 people remain in shelters. If it's in the southwest and northwest on an island like Cuba, wouldn't it be easier just to say the West? I'm just saying. Unless, of course, you're on the Associated Press and get paid per word. Or letter, perhaps. Forecasters expect Melissa, now Category 2 hurricane, to bring dangerous winds, flooding and storm surges to the Bahamas overnight into Thursday. So, a lot of stuff going on there. You see the size of these islands versus the mainland U.S., and you forget just how many people actually live on them, too. It's insane to think about just how population dense these places are. Alright, do I have any more on Melissa? Yes, I have one more on Melissa. Texas honeymooners trapped in Jamaica as Category 5 slams island. From Bonnie Chu. What began as a dream honeymoon has turned into a terrifying ordeal for Texas newlyweds Cassidy? Okay. For those of you listening to the audio platform and can't see it, and those of you in the chat as well, how would you pronounce that? That's Kasyddee. That's Kilo Alpha Sierra Yankee Delta Echo Echo. I mean, to me it says KCD. But given traditional naming and everything, Cassidy makes more sense. Anyway, Cassidy and Hunter were stranded in Jamaica as Category 5 storm Hurricane Melissa barrels towards the island, per Fox 4 Dallas-Fort Worth. For the rest of the article, we're just going to say Cassidy. Melissa's forecast has become the strongest hurricane in Jamaica's history. This, of course, is obviously prior to the landfall of it. Officials are warning of threatening flash flooding, landslides, which will bring you down, and widespread damage to nearby regions. Residents and visitors alike are being urged to take emergency precautions as the storm approaches. See, I've always wanted to do a Caribbean cruise. I'm calm by water. The prices are actually not as bad as you would think. But as soon as I'm on that boat, I know that this is going to be in the back of my mind. Even if we're not in hurricane season. Like, okay, what happens with this when this happens? The bishops who are staying in Montego Bay on the island's northwest coast arrived just before evacuation orders were issued. Okay, and we couldn't think to say, hey, go turn back around? This is not safe? That seems like a problem with the travel agency, my friend. Since then, the airport has been boarded up and all outgoing flights canceled, leaving many tourists stranded as the hurricane bears down, the station added. Yeah, that seems like a problem with your travel agency, dude. You might want to look into a new one of those. So, hopefully, Cassidy and Hunter got home safely. Alright, we gotta talk government shutdown. It's that time. Starting with the Hill today. Democrats wobble as pressure to end the shutdown ramps up. They might blink, you guys. Even with every media apparatus, every single institution, every billion-dollar corporation every television network, every publishing company, every music contract at their backs, the Democrats might cave. From Alexander Bolton, and this is coming from The Hill. The Hill is a very, very left-leaning outlet. I mean, I'd expect something like this coming from the Daily Wire, which I have some of that on the stack too, but this is from The Hill, you guys. Senate Democrats are taking a close look at the Republican proposal to pay all federal employees, including essential and furloughed workers, as they're under new pressure from the nation's largest federal workers union to pass a clean CR to reopen the government. They also plan to introduce legislation to pay for SNAP and extend funding for the Special Supplemental Nutrition Program for women, infants, and children, or WIC if you prefer, which provides essential nutrition assistance to lower-income mothers. The developments reveal Democrats are looking for a way to ease the impact of the 4-week shutdown on federal workers who are struggling to pay their daily expenses on lower-income Americans who may soon run out of food. Publicly, Senate Democratic leaders Chuck U. Schumer and his leadership team are sticking to their arguments that Trump needs to start negotiating on health insurance subsidies before they agree to reopen the government. At the same time, Democrats are feeling intense pressure to end the shutdown in a way that gives them a political win, or at least a face-saving off-ramp from the stalemate that has stalled Washington for nearly 30 days. I'm just blown away that they've gone this far. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I did not think that Republicans had enough spine to do this. And they can still puck out, by the way. And they probably will. Senators say they're hearing from experts who warn that more than 40 million Americans risk going hungry if SNAP benefits are allowed to run out. An approaching crisis they say is being made worse by the Trump admin's refusal to spend emergency food assistance funds during the shutdown. There is a silver lining to this one, especially. The SNAP thing. While I don't want to see the SNAP run out for all of Americans, I have some hope seeing that some of the states are stepping up and making an attempt to do something about it. They all should be. And hopefully everybody else follows suit. Because this should be a state's issue. This should not be a federal issue. In the conference, no one wants to be shut down. We're trying to figure out what we want from them, says a Democratic senator who requested an anonymity to discuss the uneasiness within the DNC over how long the shutdown has dragged on. Ha 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 ha. The senator said colleagues are hearing not only from the American Federation of Government Employees, which represents 820,000 federal workers, which in and of itself I think is a problem, and called on Democrats this week to pass a clean CR to reopen the government, but also from experts concerned about the food assistance running out. We've heard from unions. We hear more from the nutrition people. They're worried about running out of nutrition. That's because the president doesn't care about screwing people. He wants to screw us, and that's why this is such a slog, the Democratic lawmakers said. Look. And I don't even know which senator this is. There's every chance that this could be Mark Pocan, although Mark Pocan has no ability to look inward on himself. So I doubt that it's him. That's the senator from the Madison area of Wisconsin, who is a major prick. But we got to talk about this for just a second. This has actually got to be brought up. The president doesn't care about screwing people. He wants to screw us. That's why this is such a slug, the Democratic lawmaker said. No, that's not what's happening. What's happening is the fact that the GOP, for all of their faults, of which they have many. No, seriously, they have many, many faults. Like, it's ridiculous how many faults the GOP has. But Saying that they don't care about the American people is not a genuine and honest position to take off of this. When you're sitting here hiding behind the American people, the SNAP people, the nutrition people, the WIC people, and the federal workers as a meat shield to say, hey, do this my way, or I'll turn the media against you and everybody else, and you'll have no choice but to sit and cave to our demands. Several senators Tuesday said they'd like to take a close look at the proposal sponsored by Ron Johnson to pay all federal workers, essential workers who've been required to report for duty during the shutdown, and furloughed workers who've been told to stay home for weeks. It's something to take a close look at. I think if we could get it right, it's something that would get a lot of support, said Mark Kelly of Arizona. Although with Mark Kelly involved, that means that there's going to be several $1 billion worth of riders that go along with it. Because we can't pass a clean bill. Tim Kaine of Virginia, who represents more than 100,000 federal employees because he's in the district that is essentially DC light, said he would also examine the Republican proposal. I'll take a look, and the key will be, are the R's going to put it up for a vote, he said. Bernie Sanders! A communist who caucuses with Democrats said he would also review the bill to pay federal workers, even if federal departments and agencies stay closed. I would need to go and look at the details of that, he said. 3 Democrats voted last week for Johnson's proposal to pay only essential federal workers, such as active duty members of the military, air traffic controllers, and the Transportation Secretary admin agents, or the TSA. John Fetterman, Raphael Warnock, and John Ossoff, who face competitive re-election race next year, voted for the measure because it's all politics. If they were in safe districts, they would have told the American people to go and F themselves. Senate Majority Leader John Thune said he may bring Johnson's amended bill to also pay furloughed federal employees up for a vote right before the election in Virginia next Tuesday. The state, which will elect a new governor and AG, is home to approximately 140,000 federal employees. Thune told reporters Tuesday it's very possible the proposal to pay all federal employees during the shutdown will come to the floor in the next few days. Thune said Johnson has been talking to Dems about adding a furloughed workers and predicted there would be strong Republican support for the bill. Well, right, because it takes one of the chess pieces away from Democrats. They can't sit and hide behind furloughed workers if they're getting paid. Plain and simple. And I understand the logic of paying the ones that are actually going to work every day because they're, quote, essential. If you stay in your job after your boss says you're not essential to the company, I don't know what the hell is wrong with you, but because they are, quote, essential, still going to work every day. Of course you're going to want to get them paid, but also to not be able to hide behind the people who are furloughed, who are going to get back pay anyway, just to get it up into their hands and ready to go, and to take that meat shield away from them is huge politically. The lead Democratic negotiator on proposals to pay federal workers during the shutdown, Chris Van Hollen of Maryland, hasn't yet signed off on Johnson's offer because he wants to add language that prevent Trump from attempting mass layoffs. There's your rider right there. There it is. There's your poison pill. So I bet you this thing goes nowhere, and honestly, I don't think that plays well for the Democrats this time through. I think under most other circumstances that would have paid extremely well. I don't think that plays well this time through. I think that's... So that's where we're at for that. Mike Johnson adding in on this. Right now, Democrats are under a lot of pressure. You get the unions running against them, which is part of the reason we have Trump right now, by the way. Not the union themselves, but the union workers. Or former union workers in some cases. You got Snap running out next week, said a Republican senator who requested anonymity to talk about internal party strategy. Okay, I thought that was Mike Johnson, but yeah. Yeah, there's a ton of stuff that's going on and working against them right now. John Thune saying that he'll engage pretty soon with Democrats about ending the shutdown. If the meeting happens, it would be a rare bipartisan gathering involving top party leaders. So far this month, Thune and Chuck Schumer have not met to discuss an exit path to the shutdown, leaving it to a small group of deal-making members who have engaged in informal on and off talks. Those conversations have heated up in recent days, members of both parties say, as major ramifications bear down, including the possible lapse of federal food aid for 42 million Americans. I have a hard out today, and we're not going to go over the fact that there are 42 million Americans on supplemental nutrition, and that's a major problem in this country. Palm and I were actually just talking about this. By the numbers, 5 years ago, we'd be considered wealthy. By the numbers of what we bring in household income. And again, I'm not going to discuss numbers, but it just blows my mind on what a change 5 years can do to a salary that would otherwise on paper seem very, very good. Amazing, in fact. And yes, that is a big part of the reason that there are 42 million people on aid. From NPC News, largest federal workers union calls for an end to the shutdown, putting pressure on Democrats. We read briefly on this one from the first article, but we're going to talk a little bit more about this one. From Monica Alba over at NPC. The country's largest union, representing federal workers, is calling for lawmakers to pass a short-term spending measure to immediately end the government shutdown, urging Democrats to abandon their current position and join Republicans in supporting a stopgap solution. Buzz Fanning has joined us. Good morning, he says. Both political parties have made their point, and there's still no clear end in sight. American Federation of Government Employees President Everett Kelly wrote in a statement first shared with NPC News, "It's time to plastic clean CR and end the shutdown today. No half measures, no gamesmanship." The statement could increase pressure on Democrats to budge from their stance. Senate Democrats have insisted that they won't vote to reopen the government without a commitment from Republicans and Trump on extending healthcare subsidies through the ACA, which are set to expire at the end of the year. Without them, health insurance premiums on the ACA markets will skyrocket for many individuals and families. Again, very, very, very ironically, working against the words affordable in Affordable Care Act. It's time for our leaders to start focusing on how to solve the problems for the American people rather than who is going to get the blame for the shutdown that Americans dislike. Kelly said, stressing that there should be a resolution that allows continued debate on larger issues like growing costs and a dysfunctional federal funding process in Congress. Come here, dog. Come here. My dog's decided to join us. The dog has joined the chat. Good dog. Because when the folks who serve this country are standing in line for food banks after missing a second paycheck, because of the shutdown, they aren't looking for a partisan spin. They're looking for wages that they've earned. The fact that they're being cheated out of it is a national disgrace. American federal government employees represents 820,000 federal and D.C. government workers across almost every agency, The group is suing the Trump admin on several fronts connected to the shutdown, first over the mass layoffs organized by Trump budget chief Russell Vought, and second over partisan out-of-office email messages blaming Democrats for the shutdown that were set by the Education Department without employees' permission or foreknowledge. There he goes. He's going to hear the rapid-fire version of this. The union believes the government should reopen now and workers should receive back pay, both those who have had to work without pay and those who've been furloughed for the last 26 days. By the way, we go through this like every 3 to 5 years. I understand that it's a lucrative paycheck. You always get your back pay. It's got great pension, great benefits. But we do this every 3 to 5 years. Why the hell would you ever work for the federal government at this point? I could understand state government because I don't know how it is in your state, but in Wisconsin, we don't go through this every 3 to 5 years. You've got a steady job. From what I understand, the benefits are still good. I couldn't do it myself. But I know a lot of people who could and would, and I respect them for that. And again, especially, we don't do this in state governance every 3 to 5 years.
And state of Wisconsin benefits are pretty damn awesome.
Palm, everyone.
Good morning!
But seriously, federal workers, what are you doing here? Since the Obama administration, this has almost been a guarantee every 3 to 5 years. None of these steps favor one political side or the other. They favor the American people who expect stability from their government and responsibility from their leaders, Kelly said. Stability from the government, that's a good one. The House passed CR, which has failed 12 times in the Senate so far, will expire on November 21st. The group says it would support either that resolution or one that would fund the government for a longer period. So, yeah, even when the public sector unions are starting to turn on you, that's typically at the point where you got to start saying, as a Democrat, it's time to stop. Briefly from the Daily Wire, because they're partisan rag, but they've got extra points on this one. It's a bad day for Chuck Schumer. Dems waiver as Fed union calls for end to shutdown. From Amber Jo Cooper. The largest union of federal employees is pushing for an end to the government shutdown, dealing a major blow to Democrats as the funding fight drags on. Which we know about this one. Going back to Everett Kelly. Kelly did not lay blame on either party, but did call for the Senate to pass a clean CR, which Republicans have called for from the beginning of the shutdown fight. About 1.4 million federal workers missed a paycheck. Last week, House Speaker Johnson said at a press conference. Johnson added the House has done its work, passing the measure a month ago. The Army nurse in San Antonio, the TSA officer in Atlanta. Boo. No offense. The USDA food safety inspector in Iowa, the hundreds of thousands more like them, are being asked to keep our country running without the paychecks that keep their own households afloat, Kelly said. Senator Dick Durbin, the aptly named senator from Illinois, said the EFGA calling for the end of the shutdown has a lot of impact. 7-4's Burgess Everett reported on X. It's something we will be discussing this week, Durbin told the outlet. I'm not announcing any changes in my position at this time. They are our friends. We take them seriously. The House Freedom Caucus weighed in on Monday on X, responding to a NPC report on the union stance. It's a bad day for Schumer when even the AFGE, a union that routinely endorses and supports Democrats, sees how bizarre the Democrats' position is, the caucus wrote on X. But they are not swayed. read from CNN, Democrats not swayed by call to end shutdown from largest federal workers union. From Annie Grayer, Manu Raju, and Ellis Kim. Ed Jr. has entered the chat. Oh, we got more people coming in here. Vong has come in. Welcome. Filthy Frank enters stage left wearing a giant clock. It's time to stop. I'm going to admit I read that wrong the first time. I thought there was a rooster involved in this. Did I miss the answer to the math quiz? You can check that out in the Discord, by the way. There's an Instagram page that posts various math problems in. And I screenshot them and put them in the Discord every once in a while and tell you that if you're going to answer, you have to put it behind a spoiler. There was a little bit of debate about the last one. But yes, it has been answered correctly. The damned man, everyone. Democrats appear to be unmoved by fresh demands from the largest employees' union to reopen the government, a sign that the shutdown stalemate between lawmakers will continue as government workers increasingly feel pain during the process. It's the latest example of how pressure points have not had the power to bring an end to the current shutdown, which is already the second longest in U.S. history with no end in sight. Over 1 million federal workers are going unpaid as the impasse drags on, and some are turning to food pantries. Durbin acknowledged the statement from the American Federation of Government Employees immediately has an impact on Democrats who have closely aligned with the group, though he didn't predict a change in strategy. Still, Durbin told CNN, "I'm not seeing any change in position at this time as Democrats continue to oppose a bill to extend the current funding levels through November 21st. The widespread belief among Democrats on Capitol Hill is that Republicans will be forced to cave first, particularly as they expect millions of Americans will find out their health care premiums are spiking when open enrollment begins on November 1st. Republicans have refused to negotiate until the government reopens, and House Speaker Johnson has kept the House out of session since September 19th. Colorado Senator John Hickenlooper says, "You're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. I can't remember a situation where I felt there were less palatable choices." But he still doesn't feel ready to vote to reopen the government, like AFGE is asking. I don't feel comfortable with that because I'm not convinced that, sacrificing whatever it is, 35 million people, who are going to either lose health care or pay dramatically more, or it is worth the extra week. But it's tough, trust me. It's a hard calculus to figure out. Yeah, there are cracks forming in that armor, I can tell you. Another one on who is opposing keeping the government shut down. Major pilots associations call on Congress to end the government shutdown. Bravely from Margaret Olahan. Major pilots associations are calling on Congress to end the shutdown, citing the strain on the U.S. aviation system as the shutdown drags to its 24th day. During the press briefing, Press Secretary Bubbleheaded Bleach Blonde highlighted that the Thanksgiving holiday is approaching, warning that the White House fears there will be significant flight delays, disruptions, and cancellations across the country this holiday season. If Democrats continue to shut down the government, they will also be shutting down American air travel, Bleach Blonde warned. There are about 13,000 air traffic controllers who are considered essential workers and are currently working without pay due to the shutdown. TSA agents are also having to work without pay. Oh, TSA agents. The Southwest Airline Pilots Association, which represents 11,000 Southwest Airlines pilots, the Airline Pilots Association, which represents 80,000 pilots, the Allied Pilots Association, which represents 16,000 airline pilots, and the NetJets Association of Shared Aircraft Pilots, which represents 37,000 pilots, who fly for the private company NetJets are all issuing statements begging lawmakers to end the shutdown ahead of the holidays. The Southwest Pilots Association and the Airline Pilots Association put out public statements, while USA Today reported that NetJets Association of Shared Aircraft Pilots and the Allied Pilots Association both called for the shutdown to end as well. Additionally, the Regional Airline Association and the Modern Skies Coalition spoke out against the shutdown in late September. So they're putting pressure on this one to make it happen at this point. And also, from the Daily Wire, they're becoming more popular, which we have video of. CNN pollster shocked. I'm shocked as GOP gets shut down bump from Virginia Kruta. CNN chief data analyst Harry Enton voiced his own surprise Tuesday, as polls indicate the Republicans are not seeing a drop in popularity due to the ongoing shutdown. Enton joined CNN host John Berman to discuss the shutdown and how it might eventually come to an end. And Berman predicted the political pain for one party or the other would be what ultimately brought people to the table. Enton pushed back, noting Democrats might be the ones feeling the pain. Let's watch. I'm going to check my calendar while we're doing that one.
Starting with Republicans, how has the shutdown seemed to have affected their political standing?
Yeah, you might think, given that the Republicans are in charge of both the House and the Senate, that a government shutdown might actually hurt the Republican brand. But in fact, it hasn't. If anything, it's been helped a little bit. Take a look here, the shift in net popularity versus pre-shutdown. When we're looking at the Republican Party overall, that brand actually up 2 points. That's within the margin of error, but clearly it hasn't dropped. Come over to this side of the screen. Look at the net approval ratings for Republicans in Congress. It's actually up 5 points since pre-shutdown. So what we're seeing here is the Republican brand in Congress has actually improved somewhat compared to where we were pre-shutdown, despite the fact that Republicans control. And that's the math that John Thune and Mike Johnson are looking at is, well, hey, why should we give, and electorally speaking, when our brand has actually improved a little bit?
Now, we say their position is getting better. With whom?
Yeah, okay, with whom? So I think it's two groups that it's so important to keep an eye on. All right, changing the Republican Congress's net approval rating versus pre-shutdown. It's rallying the base for sure. Look at this, the net approval rating up 12 points versus pre-shutdown. But it's not just with the base. It's also with the middle of the electorate. Look at this, among independents. It's up 8 points as well. So we've got a situation here where Republicans with the shutdown are actually rallying their base, but it's also something that's not hurting them with the folks in the middle. If anything, it's helping them with folks in the middle. And this is the type of math that if you're Republicans, you like to see, right? Because something could rally the base but alienate those in the middle, or something could rally those in the middle but alienate the base. But the truth is, we're not seeing that. What we're seeing is the Republican brand has actually gotten better among independents, and it's also gotten better among Republicans as well, that Republican brand when it comes to those in Congress. So again, what's the electoral reason that Republicans would give in at this point?
And Democrats, of course, they have their eye.
I don't know how we got to this point, but it's hilarious at this point. Alright. We're going to have to start heading out of here at this point. We might have to come back and do some of this later on. But I do want to talk about the ballroom and everything else that went along with this one. I want to just talk before we go, before we do things I like, things I hate as well. But I want to talk just a bit about the auto pen. So let's move back over here. GOP-led oversight committee says Biden pardons signed by auto pen are void in final report. From Jake Tapper and Annie Grayer. Former President Biden experienced such cognitive decline while in office that it remains a serious question as to whether he was aware of the substance of the various pardons and communications signed in his name by auto pen. The GOP-controlled House Oversight Committee asserted in a letter it sent to AG Bondi, urging her to consider whether the clemency might be invalid and to take action for potential prosecution against some of Biden's aides. The committee deems void President Biden's executive action that were signed using the auto pen, and the committee determines the actions by the Department of Justice is warranted to address the legal consequences of that determination. It wrote to Bondi in a letter released Tuesday morning. And I followed this up with the headline as well over here from CNN. Can Trump really undo Biden's pardons? this is an analysis. This is an op-ed from Zachary B. Wolf. But I put this in here not to read Zachary's analysis. If we come back and do a second run of Contemporary, either tonight or over the weekend, we'll talk about this more. This will be one of the top ones that we have on this. But I want to talk about this now because I am of a completely different stance than Republican. I'm not a Republican. That's a part of the reason I can be on a completely different stance about this one. But I am in a completely different, separate position from Republicans on this. Trump Republicans especially want to see all the pardons undone because evil Joe Biden this, evil Joe Biden that. In fact, the analysis even comes in and says, can Trump undo Joe Biden's pardons? I mean, he can do whatever he wants. It goes back and gets litigated in the courts. But realistically, can he actually have it stick? And that's, I don't believe, is a possibility. At least on a sweeping mass pardons situation. And I'm talking about in that point the pardons that actually either got somebody off, got their conviction overturned, got them out of jail, got them out of prison, got their fines, anything else that they've done to make all that go away for people who were actually convicted of something. Now, I'm of two minds on this when I say this. For the people who were actually convicted, I look at this, and I had a hard thought about this. I talked about this when we first started talking about overturning the pardons. For the people who were actually convicted, no, I do not believe for a half of a second that there should be any reason that those convictions should be overturned. In fact, we're protected against that in the Fifth Amendment. No person shall be held to answer for any crime or put at risk of life and limb for any reason twice for the same offense. Overturning a pardon, whether it was signed by the auto pen or not, is double jeopardy. Plain and simple, that is double jeopardy. That is explicitly against the Constitution, would require a constitutional amendment. Bite me on this. Yes, it's a slimy way to get to the pardon. It's a slimy way to come back out and get it, and anything else that goes along with it. But it stands. It's the way that the founders wrote it, and I tend to agree with it, honestly. We prosecute way too many people in this country for bullshit charges. So yes, even if it's slimy, even if you're off on a technicality, you're off on a technicality. And as we saw with some of the J6 people, you're likely going to go back and offend again. So you'll be back right where you were before, under most circumstances. But you won't be doing it for the same crime. What I think is now, also with that being said, that does open the door to have court cases and litigation, civil suits, and etc. to make sure that this doesn't happen again. So we don't have the technicality that gets people off that didn't necessarily deserve to get off. But it also opens the door for the conversation about the obvious one, the preemptive pardons. Because those people were not held in jeopardy of life or limb for any crime yet. Yes, they were about to, but double jeopardy I don't think would apply to that now. Because of the sweeping part of the first half of what I just said, can those pardons be overturned? And the simple answer that I have to that is, I don't know. That would not be as an outrageous of a suggestion, though, based on the fact that, no, there's no double jeopardy that applies in that particular situation. They're not being asked to be held for life and limb for a crime they've already been convicted of. They're overturning something that prevented them from being convicted or even tried for a crime. But they never faced it before. And yeah, I honestly do think that that's entirely possible, that yes, they could be tried for that. So just kind of looking back at this article when I went on my rant, The power to pardon is set up for the president as one of the few unchecked powers in American government. It takes up less than a sentence in the Constitution. He shall have power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the U.S., except in cases of impeachment. It doesn't say anything about auto pen or even require that a president physically sign off on a pardon, much less pass a competency test. Elections every 4 years are the competency test, and the 25th Amendment allows for incompetent presidents to be removed from office. Biden's cabinet did not remove him. Although from the sounds of it, it sounds like maybe they should have. And it's not me saying that, it's his cabinet saying that. To find a historical precedent for voiding of a pardon, you have to go back to a post-revolution case in Virginia that featured 3 men convicted for treason for joining the British. Their pardons issued by Virginia House of Delegates were ultimately voided because the Virginia Senate had not concurred as required by the state's constitution at the time. Granted, all this occurred before the U.S. Constitution, much less a president's pardon power, which was inspired by the British kings, had ever been established. Nevertheless, in an effort to avoid Biden's pardons, has been building for months. Back in March, Trump declared Biden's pardon signed by auto pen void, vacant, and of no further force or effect. Taking up the baton, Republicans on the House Oversight Committee, known for their investigations of the Biden family's business dealings, investigated Biden's use of auto pen, a mechanical signature utilized by multiple presidents, including Trump in the first term. Biden issued multiple pardons, including to his son Hunter, who has been facing prison for tax and gun charges, and preemptively to people who antagonized or investigated Trump, like Schiff of California or former Speaker Pelosi, given Trump's follow-through and his promise to seek retribution against political enemies in his second term. Ed Jr. has joined the chat. She said hi. But to the question of whether Biden can actually order them, he told the New York Times in a July interview that all pardons were his decision and the auto pen was utilized due to the number of signatures required, but that is not quieted conspiracy talk. And again, I don't know if that's the case. I mean, I heard the guy say that we were all united under true international depression. I don't think he was all there and making all those decisions. But again, that's one of the cornerstones of our freedoms in this country. That we don't have to face down trial for the same crime twice. I'd love to. I think I'm going to make a one-off video. We need to have a bigger discussion about this one. I do. Maybe we'll make this a topic chat too, over in the Discord. If you're not in the Discord, you know what to do. I'm going to do that yet today. Let's have a look. Wow. A lot of stuff went on while I was going on my rant. Quest Fanning says, we usually get back a few $100 from Costco at the end of the year, thanks to the executive membership. Well, more than the $130 annual fee. Damn, man, how much has the shutdown saved in spending? I don't know. Lunacy says, he gets super excited. Creepy. Interesting, now they need to know which ones were the auto pen. Lunacy says, electronic signatures are not legal. I could say that too, but again, once the dust is settled, then if you take the Fifth Amendment to its word, you can't really go back and change it no matter what. Quest Fanning says, Biden has the mental capacity of a goldfish. Doesn't remember 12 seconds ago. Oh, come on, man! Lunacy says, pardon entire country that has been screwed and used by the elites. Damn Man says, now if they hadn't been charged yet, there you go, and that's one of the points that we made. Long says, look into the crime of uttering in English common law. Luna says, auto pen equals AI? I don't think so. And Damn Man says, no, it's more like a rubber stamp. So, alright. I have got to get ourselves into town here, so we're gonna, I think, start powering it down. Just want to look over a couple things here on things I like, things that I hate. We're going to hold off on the rules of acquisition, given the fact that it's 9:45. A couple things that I hate, though, before we take off. From the Associated Press. Let's bring this back over here so you guys can see it. U.S. is sending an aircraft carrier to Latin America in major escalation of military firepower. Because that's exactly what we need right now. Now, this goes on the extension of blowing the, quote, cartel boats out of the water. And now they're talking about doing land incursions into the countries that are sending the cartels, because apparently we're pro-war now. We just don't want to have endless slugs in the Middle East, but we're still pro-war in the most GOP move possible in the world. Alright, let's do a couple things that I like. So I wanted to talk just a bit about this YouTube channel that I've been watching here and there for quite a while. We listened to it on the way home from town yesterday, actually. The Resurrectionists. They go through the history of various fairy tales, folk tales, and yeah, they even talk about some of the things in the Bible. There was a origins of heaven before the Bible coming off of this. A little bit dry. Definitely English narration, for sure. But they've had some interesting light that goes into some of this stuff and question whether or not that some of this is even real. Chapter 2, Dark for Wind of the Wills. I haven't heard that one yet. I didn't even see that one come up in my stuff. But they talk about the flood myth, the three little pigs, the ancient humans behind the ancient fairy tale monsters. That one I haven't watched yet. The gingerbread man. We listened to that one yesterday. That was an interesting one. Like, they talk about the origins of what's going on with these stories, where they came from, some of the real life events that might have inspired them, and yes, some of the morality tales that have gone with them. So if that's something you're interested in, especially literary history, definitely the channel for you. The True Story Behind the Little Mermaid, that was a really, really good one too. So go check it out, The Resurrectionists, over on YouTube. A couple other things that I like today before we take off. Trump puts third-term theories to bed, says Constitution is pretty clear. Thank God. I know he's been out here talking about, trolling and saying, I'm going to run for a third term. We're going to do 3 terms of Trump. And even before, people were saying he deserved a third term, or maybe he can have a third term because they're not consecutive. No, the Constitution is very clear. And now we can finally stop listening to this argument go over and over and, he's going to be a king, he's going to do this, he's never going to leave office. Well, he's come out right out and said he's going to leave office. It's going to be conveniently ignored by the mainstream media, but yes, he has come out and said 2029, he's done. He's gone. He's probably still going to be a kingmaker for the GOP, but actually sitting in the office, it's finally going to be over. And thank God.
It could be a lie.
I had the greatest truths. I don't lie like Sleepy Joe Biden.
You do that way too well.
And lastly, it actually looks like they took that one down. The Daily Wire. Find the right door. Okay, that article's gone. That makes the show easier to close. We're going to talk about Arnold Schwarzenegger getting on Jake Tapper's case over gerrymandering, but it's gone. All right, let's head out of here for the day. We'll have some conversations on whether or not we can do some finishing up on the last part of the stream. I want to talk a little bit more about this investigation to AutoPen, but again, we've got some other concerns in the household, and well, we got to make sure that's taken care of first. So we're gonna head out of here for the day. Where's my outro? Oh, that's right. I don't have to look for my outro music anymore. I've got a button for that. I made a button. Alright, so with that, we're done. We're out of here. For now. we'll see what happens with the rest of the day and what we can schedule off of this. Being so close to Halloween and no pumpkins carved yet, I can't make any promises because that kind of stuff takes priority too. But for now, we're going to head out of here. This stream will be privated and re-uploaded to YouTube as a clean video, just in case we had any connection issues or anything else. You can go check that out there, or listen on the audio platform, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. I believe we're on Pandora as well, and Stitcher, so you can go check that out if you are not an Apple person. Or go check us out on the YouTube. You can join the Discord, join the conversation. We will be talking about, right before we take off for the day, I will put this in there so we can actually have a conversation about the auto pen and what you guys think about it. It looks like we have some opinions about that as well. But thanks so much. Thanks for carrying everything forward. We will see you here next time for more news, more headlines, and more contemporary. Take care. Have a wonderful day. And enjoy it. Bye-bye.